How could the ancient Greeks telling the story of Odysseus, the Navajo Indians chanting about their hero twins, and medieval storytellers recounting the quest for the Grail all be telling the same essential story? They were separated by thousands of years and miles. It's as if three programmers who had never met and spoke different languages wrote the exact same code. In 1949, a mythologist discovered this universal code hidden within humanity's greatest legends. He called it the Monomyth. This structure proved so powerful that it became Hollywood's secret weapon. But its true purpose is to serve as a map for our own lives. That scholar was Joseph Campbell. He wasn't a screenwriter or a psychologist, but a professor at Sarah Lawrence College who spent decades immersed in myths from around the world. He was like Charles Darwin, who saw the single principle of evolution by studying finches. Campbell, by studying the myths of Buddha, Moses, and Polynesian gods, saw a single principle of human psychological evolution. He noticed that the story of a hero who leaves home, endures trials, and returns transformed is repeated with incredible precision. This was not a coincidence, but a fundamental pattern of the human experience. His masterwork put forth a revolutionary idea. All heroes, from Prometheus, who stole fire for humanity, to the Buddha who attained enlightenment, have the same face. Campbell wrote, "A myth is a public dream, and a dream is a private myth." This idea turned everything upside down. He proposed that this myth is not just a fairy tale, but a metaphor for the psychological journey each of us must undertake. This leads us to the central question: how can this ancient map become a practical guide for a modern person in an age of crisis? Campbell divided this map into three great stages: departure, initiation, and return. The story always begins in a familiar setting, our ordinary world. The protagonist lives a routine life until a sudden event disrupts the equilibrium. This is the call to adventure. It might appear as Gandalf knocking uninvited on Bilbo Baggins' cozy hobbit hole, or as a mysterious message on Neo's monitor. Follow the White Rabbit. This call is rarely convenient. It demands leaving everything familiar behind. That's why the hero's first reaction is almost always refusal. "I can't get involved. I've got work to do," a young Luke Skywalker tells Obi-Wan. This is the natural fear of the unknown. And it is at this moment of doubt that a mentor appears. Their role is not to save the hero, but to give them a push, a piece of advice, an artifact like a lightsaber, or simply confidence in their own abilities. The mentor is like an experienced guide who doesn't carry you to the summit but hands you the gear and says, "You can do this." Armed with this, the hero finally accepts the challenge and crosses the first threshold. They leave their comfort zone and enter a world where different rules apply. This is the moment Dorothy opens her door and sees black and white Kansas replaced by the colorful Land of Oz. There is no going back. Beyond the threshold begins the second act, the heart of the entire journey, the road of trials. This is a series of tests that forge the hero's character and unlock their potential. Each obstacle, whether a duel or a clever trap, teaches them something new, helps them find allies and identify enemies. Gradually, this path leads them to the darkest place, the inmost cave. Here they face their greatest fear, their personal dragon. It's important to understand that this dragon is not always a monster of flesh and blood. Often it's an inner demon, pride, doubt, or, in Luke Skywalker's case, the terror of the dark side of his own nature. This is the climax where the old self must die to make way for the new. By overcoming this ultimate ordeal, the hero gains a great reward. It might be a real treasure, but more often it is knowledge, an insight, or a newfound power. It would seem the main battle is won, but the road back is an ordeal in itself. This is the third and final act, the return. The hero must not only return to the familiar world, but also be able to apply their new experience within it. Often, on the way back, they face a final, decisive confrontation, which Campbell called the resurrection. This is the final exam, proving that their transformation is permanent. And then, they are home. They are the same person, yet completely different. They carry with them the elixir, a gift capable of healing their world. This elixir isn't necessarily a magic potion. For Frodo, it was his story, his memory of the great journey. For Steve Jobs returning to Apple after his exile, the elixir was a vision of the future that gave birth to the iMac and the iPhone. The hero doesn't just save themselves. They return to share their reward with others. The journey is complete. The circle is closed. For decades, The Hero with 1,000 Faces remained a book for intellectuals. It was discussed in university classrooms, but few outside of them had heard of the Monomyth. Everything changed in the early 70s in a garage cluttered with drafts, where a young director, having failed with his dark sci-fi film, was desperately trying to write a script for his space opera. That director was George Lucas. He discovered Campbell's book and, in his own words, felt he had found the missing piece. He consciously used the 17 stages of the Monomyth as a framework for Luke Skywalker's story. The ordinary world on Tatooine, the call from Princess Leia, the meeting with the mentor Obi-Wan Kenobi, it was all taken directly from Campbell. Later, when Lucas and Campbell became friends, Campbell would joke that Lucas was his best student. Star Wars was a resounding success, not just because of its special effects. The film resonated with audiences on a deep, subconscious level. It was like listening to a song in an unfamiliar language whose melody feels vaguely familiar and evokes strong emotions. People didn't know what the Monomyth was, but their psyche recognized the pattern instantly. Lucas proved that ancient myth was a commercially successful formula. Following the success of Star Wars, Hollywood screenwriter Christopher Vogler, who worked at Disney, wrote a famous 7-page memo in 1985 titled, "A Practical Guide to the Hero with 1,000 Faces." If Campbell was the theorist who discovered the DNA of story, Vogler was the engineer who turned that discovery into a practical tool. His memo became a Bible for screenwriters. The Lion King, The Matrix, Harry Potter, they are all built on this foundation. But this formulaic approach had a downside. Some critics, and even Campbell himself, feared that Hollywood had taken only the external structure, missing the deep psychological and spiritual meaning of the hero's journey. Campbell himself said, "It's easier to follow someone else's path than to understand your own." He worried that studios would simply copy the stages like items on a checklist, without understanding their transformative essence. Instead of a tool for transformation, it risked becoming just a set of cliches for predictable plots. To understand why this journey resonates so deeply with us, we need to look beyond Hollywood and into the work of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. Jung, a contemporary of Freud, proposed the existence of a collective unconscious. Imagine it as a shared operating system for humanity. Each of us is born with this pre-installed software which contains basic images and narratives common to all people, regardless of culture. We inherit them rather than acquire them through experience. This repository is populated by what Jung called archetypes, universal models of characters and ideas. The hero, the mentor, the shadow, the threshold guardian, they are like empty roles in an eternal play. The role of the wise old man can be played by Obi-Wan Kenobi, Gandalf, or Dumbledore, but the essence of the role remains unchanged. We recognize them instantly because they are part of our internal structure. The hero's journey is that very eternal play in which these archetypes perform their parts. Jung called the process of becoming a whole person individuation. It is a psychological journey in which a person confronts their hidden parts, their shadow, and integrates them into a unified whole. The shadow is not just the villain within us. It is everything we hide from ourselves and others, our fears, suppressed desires, but also our unrealized talents. Luke Skywalker had to accept that he was Vader's son to avoid repeating his path. Campbell understood that the Monomyth was the perfect metaphor for this internal process. Thus, a myth is not just a story. It is a mirror reflecting the map of our own psyche. Watching such a film is like training in a flight simulator. You are not in real danger, but your brain and emotions go through all the stages of an actual flight. When we watch a hero defeat their dragon, we are subconsciously rehearsing the victory over our own inner dragons, our fears, insecurities, and self-doubts. But what if we stopped being a spectator in this simulator and realized that this map was drawn for us? In our lives, there are no dragons or magic swords, but the stages of the hero's journey unfold with the same relentless logic. The task is simply to learn to recognize them. To see the call to adventure not in a letter from Hogwarts, but in a termination notice. To see the threshold guardian not as a mythical beast, but as our own imposter syndrome whispering, "You can't do this." These are timeless patterns in modern settings. Your personal call is any crisis that pulls the rug out from under you. The end of a long relationship, a serious diagnosis, a creative block that lasts for months. Imagine a mid-level manager who starts having panic attacks on his way to a job he hates. His body is screaming what his mind is afraid to admit. That is the call. And the refusal of the call is his attempt to silence that scream, convincing himself he just needs a vacation, or that it's all due to stress. He ignores the problem for months, sinking into apathy. At this moment, a mentor may appear. It won't necessarily be a white-bearded wizard. It could be a therapist, a book that falls into your hands by chance, or a friend who has been through something similar. They don't solve the problem for you, but they provide a tool or a push. And that helps you cross the threshold. Crossing the threshold is the difference between a wish and an intention. Buying a gym membership is a wish. Stepping inside for the first time feeling awkward among unfamiliar equipment is an intention. It is a concrete action, sending out the first resume, signing up for a class, deciding to move. It's the moment you stop thinking and start doing. Beyond the threshold begins the road of trials. In real life, it's like learning to cook a complex dish. You will almost certainly burn or oversalt something, but each failure is not a defeat, it's data collection. Failed interviews, bad dates, struggles to master a new skill, these are all stages where you find allies who support you and learn to distinguish useful advice from empty words. Every trial, even an unsuccessful one, gives you information for the main battle. Gradually, this path leads you to the inmost cave. This is the moment of radical honesty with yourself. The most difficult conversation, making a tough decision, accepting your responsibility for what has happened. It's the moment you look in the mirror and finally say, "I am unhappy and only I can change this." This is the battle with the dragon. And the reward you receive, the elixir, is not gold. It is your new resilience, wisdom, empathy. It is a new skill or a new understanding of yourself. Often it's something you always had, but the journey was necessary for you to learn how to use it. Thus, the hero's journey is not just a literary device, it is the universal operating system for human transformation. We have seen how Joseph Campbell discovered this code in ancient myths, how Hollywood turned it into a formula, and how Jung's psychology explained its profound power. This is not just a story, it is a map. And like any good map, it doesn't remove the mountains and rivers from your path, but it shows you where they are and gives you the confidence that you can cross them. The main takeaway is a radical shift in perspective. The structure of the Monomyth teaches us that a crisis is not a system failure, but a required plot point, the call to adventure itself. It's like pain in the body. Pain is not the disease itself, but a signal from the organism that something needs attention. Similarly, a life crisis is a signal from your psyche that growth is necessary. It shows that chaos, fear, and trials are not signs that you are losing, but signs that your journey has already begun. This map does not promise an easy path, but it guarantees that a path exists. Campbell himself said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." This phrase is the essence of the entire journey. The hero's journey is not a GPS that gives turn-by-turn directions. It is more like a compass. It won't show you the exact road, but it will always point toward true north, toward your wholeness and self-realization. Myth doesn't provide ready-made answers, but it asks the right questions. What call is sounding in your life right now? What are you refusing out of fear? What is your inmost cave? The hero's journey reminds us that you have not only the right, but the obligation to become the protagonist of your own story. Ultimately, Campbell's hero has 1,000 faces because it is the face of every one of us. The farmer who becomes a warrior, the programmer who launches a startup, the woman who leaves a destructive relationship and finds herself. It is all the same eternal story of overcoming and transformation. This map is now in your hands. Myths don't just exist in old books or on movie screens, they are waiting to be lived. And right now, somewhere in the world, someone is taking the first, most terrifying step out of their ordinary world, beginning a new journey. And that will always be the greatest story of all.